It's Monday and time for the Back to Business podcast, featuring Calgary's industry leaders. Welcome today's show host, Kim Hayden.
Pivot with purpose. Here at the Cal Peak Club, CPC has done that repeatedly. They have weathered ups and downs economically here in Calgary. They have shifted and opened doors and embraced, the incredible Calgary landscape and all the businesses within it. Today, our guest, Stella Cosby, is going to share with us her journey in that and on our 100th episode. Again, another pivot with purpose. And I got to give a huge shout out to the Calgary Petroleum Club, the CPC, Cal Peak Club, whatever you call it. It's right here downtown Calgary, and they are pivoting with purpose every day. Stay tuned. But first, our land acknowledgement. We here at the Calgary Petroleum Club, in a spirit of reconciliation, honor and acknowledge that the land on which we learn, work, and live is Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. This place is a traditional homeland for the First Nations and Métis peoples, and today we all are part of this treaty land. Welcome to the show, Stella. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. It's great to be here.
Great to be here. And you've been here for quite some time. We're going to be diving in to a very unique to you story, but I think a story that unfortunately is a unique kind of story for a lot of women out there. And we keep breaking these barriers, but you have broken barriers here at the club around just accessibility. So today on our 100th episode, I was just saying to Stella that this is a real honor, and it goes to show how amazing the Calgary Petroleum Club is, that they achieved only 7% of the 7 million podcasts globally that have been released. They're in the top 7% through consistency and service and creating a good, safe space to come and be your best. So, Stella, let's dive into this. We're here because tell us about your lunch experience.
Back in 1989, I was a human resource manager for Burke's Jewelers, and I had the opportunity to go for lunch. That wasn't new for me. My boss at the time, who was the area manager for Alberta, we'd go for lunch regularly, and we go to various restaurants downtown. So it wasn't anything new and unexpected. But on that day, Bob said, "I'm taking you to the Petroleum Club." And I thought, oh, isn't that going to be cool? So came, and I was one of the first women to be led into the dining room, because before then, women weren't allowed to be at the club. Occasionally, we were invited to come in after 2:00 for a meal, but we weren't members, and it wasn't the normal course of events to be able to see women in the club for lunch. So Bob took me there, and when I walked through the doors, people were looking at me. And then in the large dining room, it was surreal because there was only maybe a dozen other women in the room, and just sitting there and watching the men just look at us women, because it was unexpected. It's not something that they expected every day. So it was quite an experience for me. I was used to being the only woman in a lot of, leadership teams, or even, later in my career, board meetings, but never to the degree that I saw on that day. They were welcoming, but it was unusual. It was new for them. And it wasn't something that they expected, even though the club had changed the rules.
I bet you on that day, all the men were far better behaved than normally.
Well, I can't speak to that, but they were gracious, but they were just a lot of looks at our table. And frankly, even the staff at the Petroleum Club, right? The women, they didn't know they hadn't served women for lunch before. So their jobs had changed too. Do you serve the woman first? Do you do ask the man first? So it was all new for them too. It wasn't just I as a guest.
That would be fascinating, because we know that through service etiquette,
yes,
that you always serve the woman first, yes, right? Or, you go to the left. Like there's all these etiquette calls when you're serving at a higher level. So there's 12 women approximately in the room. what happened when you left lunch? Like, what was your takeaway from that experience?
Well, first of all, I was honored to be one of the first women in there. So it was unique because I felt special. And that's always important to make sure that you relish that. But then as I left, as soon as I left the front doors of Petroleum Club, there was a reporter from the Calgary Herald, like with a mic in my face and snapping pictures because they wanted to capture this moment of the first woman that had dined in the Petroleum Club. Now, as it happened, it was me. It could have been any one of the other ladies, but I was probably the first one that left the luncheon. And they just asked me a couple of questions, right? And I remember eating a steak sandwich. And why did I order a steak sandwich? I felt like I was in a club and my boss ordered a steak sandwich. So I didn't know exactly what to do and I wanted to make sure I fit in. That was back in 1989. I think we've come a long way since then. But so it was pretty incredible to be part of that and to be one of the first women in this foundational club.
So the 12 women in the room actually correlates with when we look at C-suite women. I believe you said it was 30%.
Yeah. So when I look back and in 2008, when I first joined the club, that's later than when I first had my luncheon here. They didn't have good data in terms of how many women were in C-suites or board positions, but they estimated it would be between 10 and 12% thereabouts. So right now in 2024, we're sitting at about 30% of C-suite women in boards and in leadership positions. So I guess that would represent what we had in the club at that luncheon. There are more men than women.
Yeah. What's something, if you look at that experience and we look at since then to today, can you share kind of your thoughts on how we are moving forward as a society and where you would like to see us go?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think as a society, we're seeing many more women going to university, and I think it's at least equal graduates from universities and technical schools as women. And so we see the opportunity to have more careers in different areas. So that's a really positive thing. So our graduation rates are almost equal, but at the same time, we're not necessarily getting equal access to networking and to opportunities. So we've done a really good job on the education front for women, and women are stepping up and getting educated. There's more focus on STEM areas of focus and technical schools, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily translate into leadership positions and board roles. So we've got a way to go. So in 2008, if we had approximately 10 to 15% that are executives or board level positions that are held by women, in 2020, it hit about 20%. And in 2024, it hit about 30%. And I think we're kind of plateauing right now on that. So we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And it's not necessarily because women aren't educated. Perhaps women aren't getting the P&L experience or the operations experience to be able to have some foundational experiences so they can access some of these C-suite opportunities. It could be that there's still some systemic or some bias in the system. And there's also inability to access the networks. So the networks that women have don't necessarily translate into being with people that can help them advance their careers.
So we're talking opportunities. So education, yes. In Canada, we're actually number one globally for post-academic, 63% of our population, and we are basically bang on 50-50, which is really good to see because we're leading, we're setting examples here. We're creating space for both. And when we talk about equal access, do you and we're going, this is, okay, folks, there's no science behind what I'm going to say. This is just queries. And I'm just curious because Stella, I'd like to get your input on when we talk about access and opportunity, and we talk about having children or procreating or moving forward. And then we layer in the new technology opportunities and remote work and flex shifting. If you were to wave a magic wand with everything out there, knowing that, everybody tomorrow cannot stop having babies, right? That just is not economically good for the country. It doesn't, who's going to turn the lights off, right? Yeah. When the last kid gets rolled over, who's going to turn the lights off? What would you say in your lived experience, in your education, that is a good way for us to start supporting more women, knowing some of the obstacles and creating opportunity?
That's a loaded question.
I know.
It's a big question. It's a big question. So, for me, I think you can have it all as a woman or as a man. I just don't think you can have it all at once. Right. And so when people talk about work-life balance, I've never had work-life balance. It kind of ebbs and flows, and you lean in when you have to and you lean out when you have to. So that's a personal philosophy that I have. Now, I consider myself, I'm a corporate director, executive. I'm a wife and a mother. And I was able to do all those things, but I maybe didn't do them in a straight line. It wasn't a ladder up. It could have been maybe a climbing wall. You go over a few and then you laterally, and then you move down maybe, and then you move up. So you got to be ready for that, right? So it's not a linear ladder up. The second thing that I would say is that women have to make those choices on their own or with their partners. And so they have to make sure that they're clear on what decision's in front of them. And early in my career, I was introduced to the concept of juggling rubber and glass balls. So if you're juggling, you've got these balls, rubber and glass. And so anytime something came in front of me, whether it's personally or with my family system or at work, and I had to make a decision, I would ask myself, is this a rubber ball that if I drop it, it will bounce away, and if it's important, it'll come back? If it's a glass ball and I drop it, it's going to shatter, and I may never get that opportunity again. So that has informed me over the last 25 years when I'm making decisions, because you want to do everything. And you want to innovate, you're excited, you want to do these things. Especially if you're accomplish focused. So I think about rubber and glass balls, and I still do that to this day. Even in a boardroom conversation, if somebody says something that's could trigger me or could be an emotional hook, I still ask myself, am I going to engage in this? Is it a rubber ball or is it a glass ball? So that I can make sure I'm very intentional and I can pivot with purpose. And so I think women, going back to that, is that we all need to make decisions for our personal life, whether it's a family system or having children, etc. You have to understand what the consequences are and pivot with purpose and make those decisions. And one size will not fit all. The last thing I'll mention, this remote work, I think it's positive. COVID, that's one of the positive things of COVID, is that we have a little more flexibility, especially for women, because we do carry the majority of the load at home. But FaceTime is really important. And so I worry about the impact of remote work on everybody's career, male and female, because they're not in the office. You're not able to innovate and collaborate and build on each other's ideas or go to the office next door and say, what do you think of this? But for women, I think it'll be even more important, because we may not have the FaceTime that we need, and we may not have the opportunity to communicate and get mentored and sponsored to the degree that we need. So it's a double-edged sword. It's got some positives. But at the same time, I do worry about the careers of men and women, but particularly women.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't have the access.
Alicia Quisnell, who is the new club president. By the way, folks, there's been 6 female club presidents here now, and they're just like it. And it's in the last 15 years, it's been equal opportunity. It's very much equal. But Alicia touched on exactly that. In our conversation, we talked about mentorship and how it's impacting with the remote and the pandemic and everything that's spun out from that, and the level of progression and learning curves within the legal industry.
Yes.
So I can see how that would be in kind of all spaces.
Oh, yes. I think everywhere, right? Because, to get opportunities, you need some face time. Right. And in order to create connections and, you're working with an organization. I've had the privilege of working for some phenomenal organizations, and I think our early career stages are really important because it sets the foundation for our mindset. Right. So I've always worked at the intersection of people leadership, strategy, and culture, because I think those threes, when they overlap, they can really deliver superior results. And early in my career, I had the opportunity to work with an organization whose CEO constantly said that the differentiator for this company was legendary people leadership, because everyone else can get access to capital, everything being equal. Equipment. They all have the same things. The things that will differentiate you. It's not just leadership. It's legendary people leadership, so that you can have people following you and you invest in people, because then you can deliver superior results for all stakeholders, not just shareholders, but your customers, your employees, and your communities. Right. And so that really formulated my career over the last 35 years, and that stuck with me. And so I say to young women, especially, your first few jobs, make sure you pick them. Pick something that you're passionate about. Find something that you believe in and someone that believes in you. Because when you have that, it's amazing, because then you've got people that can advocate for you and support and give you opportunities to learn.
Well, and that's where here at the club, they've taken on the mantle of the Young Professionals Group. And as you mentioned, 30% C-suite. Are we tapping out? Are we capping out? What's fascinating is maybe C-suite is going to transition slightly to where we're going to have more professionals, small business entrepreneurs, because large corporations are shifting the way that they work. They're becoming more efficient.
Yes.
You gotta love Gemini and ChatGPT and all these LLMs. I mean, they are becoming more efficient. But there's still creation happening. And here at the club, they have over 40% of their young professionals are women. Yeah. So I can wholeheartedly say that currently the club has a trajectory. They are forecasting to exceed that 30% by, you used a term we were talking before that I really liked, that it was like something around cultivating or
it's a pipeline. It's creating a pipeline, right? So I think the club has done an amazing job of maintaining the foundation of the basic purpose of the club for networking and business, but they've also evolved over the years to make sure that they're targeting diverse audiences, whether it's the young professionals, diverse clubs, providing learning and networking opportunities for people to come and socialize and have access to different thoughts. And I think that's been amazing for the club to do that. And they walk the talk from a diversity and a gender perspective. You see the first Petroleum Club president was Bonnie DuPont, who's just a legend in the city. And we've had many more female presidents. So they're not exclusively focusing on women, because that's not necessarily appropriate either. You don't want to disenfranchise the men, because that is not going to help the end goal. But at the same time, it's created the openness and the welcoming of women. And so, yes, I think that Young Professionals Club, providing access to young women that are professionals or early in their career to be able to come and learn, network, participate, have a glass of wine, share a meal with people. I think that's what the club embodies. And I think that's why I'm a big proponent of the P Club.
Business clubs globally are coming back on track. For a while there, we were wondering, is this a archaic or outdated do we need this? And then we saw the pandemic happen. And then we see the fracturing of in-person engagement. And now we're seeing globally the clubs coming back online. Now, the CPC here has managed to become recognized 300 clubs in Canada, and they are getting recognized year after year. Innovation, leadership, just the fact of they're consistently opening up 125 associate clubs and programs that are not directly led by CPC but welcomed, right? And this includes diversity programs around ensuring that our Black Chambers in Calgary is supported. I know that they have some new programs they're looking at around new Canadian programs.
Yes.
And growing our city. And Calgary is an amazing city. If you're sitting in another city and you're trying to understand why we would do this podcast here in Calgary, just mark my words, mark this date, 1 year from now, the shifts that are happening in Calgary, we can't even see everything that's going on through having the Truman buildings announced, the 2 tallest towers in Calgary going up, having the new BMO centers and welcoming tens of thousands of people to come and learn and educate here in Calgary. And I believe that I love how you said people, strategy, and culture. And I believe that places like CPC inspire that.
Yeah.
I'd like to circle this back around if you're okay with this, because I just feel like you have so much wisdom and you've worked in such a diverse background, but it seems that it's always been around, and I'm going to use a very, very kind of layman term, but around the soft skill factor of being able to engage and being able to navigate. And I know that seems to be a challenge for a lot of our younger people coming into the workforce, or a lot of them are like, well, it goes against this for me, or everybody should be this. And I think there's a learning curve for our young professionals. We've talked rubber balls and glass balls, and we've talked pivot with purpose. And I love that, by the way. I love that term. Let's talk about some key advice that would really benefit some of these young professionals to be able to start navigating on a professional level.
Yes.
Take it away, Stella.
Well, anytime I get a chance, I always say to young women is get the opportunity to get into operations or to get some P&L experience. Don't hesitate to put your hand up and apply for these roles. Many times we as women are not as confident. We look at a job and we say, you know what, we don't have all the qualifications yet. Our male colleagues apply and they don't necessarily have them. Right? And so apply, take a chance. We're not as risk takers as men are, but take a chance. So that's the first thing I would say to women. Secondly, I'd say make sure you choose the company and the leader you're going to be working for wisely, because they're the ones that are going to set the stage. They're either going to believe in you and give you opportunities to learn. They're going to advance you. Now, just a short story. I've had the opportunity to work with my first female boss was just amazing, just absolutely amazing. Sheila O'Brien, she's a legend in Calgary too. So she gave me opportunities that I never thought I had, that I could do, but she supported me along the way. I also had that at Agrium. Quick story, just to help women advance. When I was at Agrium, our CEO, Mike Wilson, at the time, I would plan and execute a 2-day annual leadership conference with 130 leaders across the globe. And we'd organize it, be external speakers, and we would and make sure that there was a representation of women, because I was privileged to be able to put that in the succession plan, that we started tracking it and setting some expectations. And we would always have a golfing event. So there'd always be an afternoon that you could golf. And one day Mike asked me, he says, well, what do you think, Stella? And I said, well, all women don't golf. And so what we did is we created the afternoon. You could go golfing, but you could also go for a spa. And guess who was the first one to sign up to get a spa? a massage, Mike, the CEO. Word got out that he signed up. So, of course, other men were signing up. And every year there was more because it either gave men permission to do the things that they wanted to do, or it gave them the opportunity for access to the CEO. It doesn't matter which one it is, but there's a great example of a leader that sponsors women and understands the intricacies of access. So that's just a story. So
I love that.
Yeah. So going back to that. So make sure you choose your organization wisely and the leader that you'll be working with or for, and stay away. Run as fast as you can when you see elastic morals or elastic ethics. Yeah. Like get out of there because it's the one that's going to eat you up.
Oh, and drama.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Okay, folks.
Yeah.
In business, if you're in business or doing anything, really, the only emergencies are if there's like a requirement of a storm shelter or a hospital.
Yeah.
Everything else, do not send capital text. If somebody's sending you capital text, you need to look elsewhere. If you start sending capital text, you need to find a better mentor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's my big one is like, you know what?
And women, mentorship is more passive, right? So we learn, we're educated, there's learning, then there's mentorship, then there's sponsorship, and then there's advocacy. So make sure you're working with people, a leader or colleagues that speak positively, say your name positively when you're not in the room.
Yes.
Right? So that you know
and
that
recognize what you bring.
Absolutely. Because it's the worst thing that you could do is having to go to work and not enjoying it, not being your best.
That is one of the things on the flip side of women working with women is I think because it's been so ingrained from like way back when, there's only 2 spots on the stage out of 10. And so instead of us going, well, let's just make it 3 spots on the stage, I find that a lot of women will push back.
Yes.
And so, and they'll do things that like, they try to push you into a certain corner or peg you in a certain hole. Oh, you only do this, or you can only be here, or we don't want you to
or they're
meet
insecure.
The people that we know.
Yeah, and they're insecure, right? Like we've all had leader. I mean, I had, one like that, and it was probably my worst leadership experience in my life. It really impacts you, right?
It does.
And so you expect more. So what happens is when you have expectations, you'll always be disappointed.
Yeah.
Because you expect more. But not all women are like that, but they're still out there because they've grew up and their lived experience was they had to fight for every position, every FaceTime, every promotion, etc. And to me, that's not very conducive to the end game. The end game is to equal access and opportunities. And we as women, we need to make sure that we lift ourselves, but we lift as we climb up. So we climb, but we lift others with us.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if we're not lifting others with us, then we're missing out on 50% of the talent pool.
Exactly.
Right? Because if women represent 50% of the population, probably the working force, then if we haven't got access to them, we are missing out and companies are missing out.
And then the consumer, the company serves.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
3 of the most powerful words that I was ever taught. I've done huge amounts of like through Maxwell, Zig Ziglar, you name all the sales training out there. And the 3 most powerful words is so you can. And when we're all going to our business, right, we got to think, what are we learning? What are we giving back? And what is the end purpose? So you can live a better life. So you can create legacy. So you can. Yeah. And I really want to close that here at the club. The club literally is living a so you can life. Yeah. It is through its absolute leadership. They're creating a space for the young professionals. They're creating for space for numerous clubs and programs. So you can. So each Calgarian that chooses to grow their business, impact their community, or is just on a mission to create legacy, the club is here to help facilitate.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a privilege to be part of this club, but it's also an obligation to be able to be here and to open doors for other people. And the inclusiveness of the leadership here and how it continues to evolve, because businesses change.
Absolutely.
And so leadership changes and demographics are such that, all of us are going to get a little bit older. So how do we access a pool of people that are going to be our future leaders and our future community leaders, business leaders, etc.? So I think the club it adapts, and the leadership is so welcoming. And Tony Marie and Glenda have done an amazing job to make sure that women feel seen, heard, and welcomed.
Thank you, Stella.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Back to Business podcast. Be sure to visit calpeteclub.com, CALPETECLUB.com, to find out more about upcoming events, networking opportunities, and membership. If you are not already a valued member at the CPC, where we are proudly connecting and supporting Calgary's business leaders.